speaking of Brumos, here is Darren Law sitting in 6th position, and Colin Braun, the fast-charging Colin Braun, who tested his ARCA car here within the past 2 weeks. And a little birdie tells me that when they put on some fresh tyres at the end of the day, he did a lap time good enough to match this year's pole time. And then we get to Colin Braun in the 75. I wonder what Crone Racing thinks of their progress thus far. Let's find out.
Well, Lee, Jeff Hazel makes all the big decisions at Crone Racing. And Jeff, I think we all thought that the 75 car was going to be dominant all season long. And when you look at its performance, especially you look at Mexico City to Laguna Seca, the car led 35% of the laps. But since Watkins Glen to now, it's led less than 2% of the laps. Now, also at Watkins Glen, that's when Colin announced that he was going to go NASCAR racing. Is there anything there that maybe that program has taken away a little bit of this program?
Well, I can see why that question kept you awake all night. The answer is no. Colin's very focused on this program. And remember, you only have to lead 1% of the laps, and that's the last lap, and that's what we're trying to do.
Well, they're still trying to lead that last lap to get their first win of the year, Lee.
We'll see if they can do it. There's a lot of work between now and then.
Do you have trouble sleeping, Chris?
Hey, go easy on Chris. He's been ill this week.
Yeah, I know.
We're lucky to have him here.
He's giving it to me, yes.
So, Braun continued.
Best position that the 19 car has finished in this year is 7th, but that's 3 times, but they've certainly shown. Here he goes again, sticks it down the inside.
And there's the spin that you knew sooner or later would happen if they made contact.
Now, this is going to be a call, Dorsey, for Mark Raffoff. He said he's going to be lenient, but typically when someone gets turned around,
there's going to be a penalty. And Colin Braun is not a lapped car, and he's not someone who is a back marker, if you will. So it's going to be looked at much more harshly.
Slips back into the clutches now of Christian Fittipaldi. The pressure is coming from everywhere. Here's the replay.
Well, this is what happens when you really drive one in there. The other driver really not knowing you're there, turns down, you make contact, and it always ends up the same way, doesn't it?
trouble with those rumble strips on the inside. You really can't afford to use that because it's going to just throw you further into the car. So the gap was diminishing. Mike was already there, had nowhere to go.
Speaking of the 75, let's hear the thoughts of co-driver Max Pappas.
Max, in recent weeks, we've seen a rather heavy-handed approach from race control and contact on the racetrack. Are you at all surprised right now that the 19 has not been brought to pit lane because of the contact with Colin?
We knew it was going to be attrition, you know, and it looks like, it's difficult to say from the TV, you know, looks like Valiente tried a very low percentage move, just stick his nose there, and, you know, Colin was turning already, you know, but, you know, he's, the thing was that his splitter was just right on the side of the Colin's wheels, and it's difficult to really say, you know, that definitely is disappointing because, you know, we need some luck here. You know, we just needed a little bit, you know, if the guy would have been a few inches back, that would have been a really bad move. It's difficult to say. I'm kind of disappointed.
Well, everything was definitely looking better for Colin Braun. He had worked his way up into the top 5 coming out of pit lane in 8th.
Well, I can tell you that we can put a period on this. Race control has said that it is a racing incident. No penalty to be handed to Michael Valiente.
Well, I'll tell you what now. If that's the case and I'm Colin Braun, guess what?
You can't do the same.
Well, you're going to get pretty forceful when you get back out there and you come across traffic. He said, okay, they're the rules. I'm going to play by those.
If that's the way we play, then that's the way we play, you know.
Colin Braun in the 75. He's got a clear run now, clear track. This is good. He can get about his work now. And this is how he is in a clear track position.
Woo, that's the very fastest part of the course. Off the banking, dives it down the inside of David Donahue.
And I would have to think, Dorsey, that maybe David Donahue's spotter gave him word that Colin Braun was down there on the inside. And there you see, they fight all the way through. Unbelievable stuff. That was reminiscent of Senna and Alessi in that Grand Prix. Side by side through 3 or 4 corners.
That's a very good point that you made about the spotter up on the roof here. Tell him that he's inside, so David knew not to cut down or they would spin.
Good clean racing there by both drivers.
Now let's keep a watchful eye on the lap times that Colin Braun turns. It's still Pruitt, Gurney, Valiente, and Long. This will be interesting.
The one thing we've still got to think about, the fact that a bunch of those leaders pitted right on the cusp of getting into their fuel window.
Then a little controversy. Colin Braun and Michael Valiente make contact. Braun with spin. Valiente able to take this position and go into third. This week's BF Goodrich Tires Fast 5.
Starting with number 5. Colin Braun takes a little time to hit the books and study for his NASCAR introduction. Then he got his first lesson in rubbing his racing later that night.